Details of notification mechanism talks in Beijing yesterday. Alleged Co-Select Committee blasts 2 former MTR executives for covering up express rail link project delays. And the pound's exchange rates crash, falling to below 10 against the Hong Kong dollar at one point.
Good evening. Lawmaker James To says bookseller Lam Wing-Ki has accepted an offer of police protection. This after Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying and several top SAR officials briefed the media earlier today on notification mechanism talks in Beijing yesterday. Reporters were told that during the talks, mainland authorities did not ask local officials to hand Lam over. Evelina Leung has more details.
Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying, along with the SAR officials who were in Beijing yesterday to discuss the cross-border notification system, met the press this morning. The CE said during the meeting, both sides agreed to notify each other within 14 days of the arrest of any of the residents. Leung added that they also agreed to give each other more information about the cases and increase notification channels. He also said that SAR strive to expand the mechanism to cover all law enforcement agencies on the mainland. The chief executive said both sides agreed to hold a second round of talks at the end of the month. Meanwhile, Secretary for Security Lai Tong-kwok said there are no plans to hand over bookseller Lam Wing-Ki to mainland authorities.
We act in accordance with the Hong Kong law, and there is no legal arrangement for the transfer of a person to the mainland authorities. And the Hong Kong government will handle all cases in accordance with the laws of Hong Kong.
This afternoon, lawmaker James To, who has been helping Lam, said the police have agreed to offer Lam protection, and Lam has accepted the offer in principle. To said the details of the police protection are still being worked out.
I don't know the reason why police changed their mind, whether due to their update assessment or anything, I don't know. But I feel that Mr. Lam is more relieved when he heard the senior police officer announce their intention to offer protection to him.
This comes after Lam claimed in a newspaper interview that he had been stalked by people in Hong Kong. Today, To said a police investigation found that Lam had been followed by 3 vehicles. Police said one of these vehicles was hired by a media organization and another was driven by an off-duty firefighter. Evelina Leung, TVB News.
British Interior Minister Theresa May has opened up a strong lead in the race to become the new Conservative Party leader and Prime Minister. Alan Booknia reports.
Theresa May garnered half the votes of the Conservative members of Parliament with 165. She campaigned for the Remain side, but has vowed to carry out the task of leaving the European Union. Andrea Leadsom, a Leave campaigner and junior energy minister, finished second with 66 votes. Justice Secretary Michael Gove finished third with 48 votes. Gove upended the race when he withdrew his support for former London Mayor Boris Johnson and announced he would be seeking the leadership himself. Johnson subsequently announced he would not be joining the race. Former Defense Secretary Liam Fox finished with the fewest votes at 16 and was automatically eliminated. Work and Pensions Minister Stephen Crabb placed fourth with 34 votes, but he said he was pulling out and throwing his support behind Theresa May, as is Liam Fox. Meanwhile, 2 senior Conservative leaders were caught off guard while discussing the leadership race before doing a TV interview. Former Treasury Chief Ken Clark, who was speaking to former Foreign Secretary Malcolm Rifkind, described Theresa May as a difficult woman.
So long as she understands that she's not to deliver on some of the extremely stupid things she's been saying. What a fiasco.
I don't mind who wins as long as Gove becomes third.
long as Gove is not in the final two, I don't mind what happens. I don't think the membership will vote for Gove. He did us all a favour by getting rid of Boris, who just... the idea of Boris as Prime Minister is ridiculous. And that could have happened.
Voting resumes tomorrow when the party's 330 legislators choose from the three remaining candidates. Then in September, about 150,000 Conservative Party members will choose between the last two. Alan Booknia, TVB News.
The British pound continues to struggle in the wake of the UK's vote to leave the European Union. Today it dropped to a new 31-year low. Rachel Lung reports.
The British currency sank to $1.28, its lowest level since 1958. At one point, the pound to Hong Kong dollar exchange rate dropped to lower than 10. Many see that as a chance to stock up. Mrs. Wu is considering spending around 100,000 Hong Kong dollars on the pound. The owner of this money exchange shop says since Britain voted to leave the EU, more people have come in to buy the pound. He adds that suppliers are even having problems making sure there's enough of the currency on hand. Travel agents in Hong Kong also see a rise in UK business. Deputy General Manager of Wing On Travel Simon Ma says customers are showing more interest in traveling to England. He says the cost of a 13-day tour could drop as much as 50%. Meanwhile, educational consultants say they've gotten 12% more inquiries about studying in the UK.
The reason may be because the HKDSE result will be released in next week, and so we expect maybe to have more inquiries and more students to inquire about studying in the UK.
Bajing warns, however, that as the sterling drops, daily expenses in the UK will go up as imported products rise in price. Rachel Ling, TVB News.
The head of a British inquiry into the Iraq war has strongly criticized former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and his government, saying that they had led the country into war based on flawed intelligence that should have been challenged. The long-awaited report also said Britain had joined the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq in 2003 without exhausting peaceful options, that the legal basis for military action was not satisfactory.
We have concluded that the UK chose to join the invasion of Iraq before the peaceful options for disarmament had been exhausted. Military action at that time was not a last resort. We have also concluded that the judgments about the severity of the threat posed by Iraq's weapons of mass destruction, WMD, were presented with a certainty that was not justified. Despite explicit warnings, the consequences of the invasion were underestimated. The planning and preparations for Iraq after Saddam Hussein were wholly inadequate.
Yellow and red outlines.
The inquiry's purpose was for the British government to learn lessons from the invasion and occupation that followed, in which 179 British soldiers died. The inquiry rejected Blair's view that Iraq's post-invasion problems could not have been known in advance. Blair has always rejected any suggestions he acted dishonestly. Published 7 years after the inquiry began, the report runs to 2.6 million words and includes details of exchanges Blair had with then U.S. President George W. Bush over the invasion. A French parliamentary investigation has found multiple intelligence failures before the Islamic extremist attacks that killed 147 people in Paris last year. Of the 40 proposals that came out of their investigation, lawmakers are calling for the creation of a U.S.-style counterterrorism agency to better prevent further violence. Meanwhile, a Belgian judge has sentenced 15 members of an Islamic State militant cell to up to 16 years in prison after convicting them of plotting attacks on targets, including the Brussels airport. 9 of them were sentenced in absentia and are subject to an international arrest warrant. Suicide bombers killed 16 people at the Brussels airport and another 16 on a Brussels metro train in March. However, prosecutors said the men sentenced had no role in those attacks. The 6 defendants who were in court were arrested after a police raid early last year that suggested Belgium had become a hub for militants. Taiwan is bracing for the region's first super typhoon of the year. A sea warning was issued at 2:30 this afternoon, and a land warning is expected later tonight. In just 48 hours, Napartak has rapidly strengthened from a tropical storm to a super typhoon, packing winds of up to 230 kilometers per hour. It's located southeast of Taiwan and is expected to make landfall in the eastern or northeastern part of the island. Authorities have urged people to take precautions, warning the storm's effects will be most strongly felt in Taiwan between Thursday afternoon and Friday morning.
Back locally, a Legislative Council Select Committee report out today accuses two top former MTR Corporation executives. They're accused of deliberately covering up construction delays of the Express Rail Link project. The railway giant has hit back at the findings. Winna Wong tells us more.
After an investigation of about a year and a half, the LegCo Select Committee looking into the problems plaguing the local section of the Guangzhou-Shenzhen-Hong Kong Express Rail Link released its full report today. It highlights issues with the MTR Corporation's overall management and singles out two executives in particular. Many of the Select Committee's 13 members felt the railway giant's former project director, Chiu Tai-chung, and former chief executive, Jay Walder, had deliberately covered up the delay. The committee found it unacceptable, given the corporation's scale, experience, and responsibilities, that Chiu appeared to be the only person to have overall knowledge of the project's progress. The report says the company's senior management and board of directors simply relied on Chiu's assessment when it comes to the status of the project. As for Walder, the report says he should have had full knowledge of the serious delay, but did not appear to have reported it to the board fully and accurately. As for the government, the report says while there was an attempt of non-disclosure by the Transport and Housing Bureau and Highways Department, committee members found no sufficient evidence that there was a deliberate cover-up on their part. MTR Corporation Chairman Frederick Ma disagrees with the findings.
We are deeply disappointed that the Select Committee holds MTR responsible for the alleged cover-up by its senior management staff, which is a serious allegation made lightly without solid grounds.
Ma pointed out that two other independent investigation committees, one appointed by the government and the other by the MTR Corporation itself, have found no cover-up. In another twist, 5 pan-democratic lawmakers on the Select Committee have refused to endorse the report. A separate minority report released by them today argues that the government is just as guilty of covering up the delay as the MTR Corporation. Winna Wong, TVB News.
And still to come in the news tonight, no criminal charges against Hillary Clinton over the use of her private email server. Barack Obama endorses Clinton's presidential bid. And a 6-year jail term for South African Paralympian Oscar Pistorius over the killing of his girlfriend.